following podcast is recorded and produced by Emerge, a media creators co-op, in affiliation with the network at bicbp-radio.com.
Welcome to the Double Fist Punch podcast, called such for the action of beating somebody's ass.
Yes,
Star Trek.
inefficiently.
Yes, inefficient ass beating in Star Trek. If you're a wrestling fan, you might also know it as the axe handle smash.
Yes.
So, why are we doing this podcast?
Well, first of all, we're big Star Trek fans, and we decided we wanted to do a little bit different kind of podcast. And we're gonna. Well, you want to explain like how we're going to handle this? I mean, we're just both big Star Trek fans, and we've met through our friend Julian, who appreciate him being our producer for this. And we just both love the show and the universe, and we want to talk about it.
Yeah, this is a appreciation podcast. We're going to be going through the episodes and talking about like just things we like about the episodes. There might be a little bit of like production criticisms here and there, but it's not like going to be all about, well, this is terrible and they should have done it this way or whatever. I guess I'm blowing out the microphone a little bit. But yeah, so we're gonna go through.
No, we love the show, and we'll say when an episode's not great, or this could have been done better. But that's not what this. I don't think that's what this podcast will be at all. I think this is going to be like we like the show, and we can appreciate the genre that, like, for me, I literally grow up on. So, Yeah,
I mean, Star Trek ultimately isn't even really about the production quality of the show. Like, that's never been what I enjoyed about Star Trek. I mean, granted, for the time, the original series had great production quality, but it's always about the moral of the story,
Correct.
Which we'll get into when we get into the Man Trap and Charlie X.
Yep.
But the real reason we're doing this podcast is because we love the show, right?
Yeah,
like,
without a doubt.
This arguably one of the best and longest running television series ever. So we're going to be going through episode to episode, talking about the individual quirks of the episodes, things we noticed about the episodes, stuff like that. So what...
I think you should introduce yourselves.
Oh, yeah. I am Rick, and this is my co-host.
Rich.
Yes, we are Richard and Richard. I assume that's what Rich is short for.
Yep. At least I think so.
I never bothered to ask until right now. All right, so how did you...
So what you want me to do? I'll do my bit first, and then you can kind of do your version of it. So, I'm Rich. This is actually my facility, Emerge facility. So it's really fun to be sitting here and not pressing the buttons for a change, so I can actually enjoy this part. I host a couple other podcasts, but here's the funny thing. So this whole facility started because I taught media production at my high school for 20-something years or whatever it was before I retired. But I got that gig because I was the only guy who knew anything about video in the early 90s at Niagara Falls High School. But I knew that because back when I was in high school, my friends and I made Star Trek parody movies. And then I started making money by doing weddings. So really, I realized last night, talking to my wife, how excited I was to do this podcast, that really all of this is happening, and all the relationships I have and everything that's going on is because of my love of Star Trek. Because I don't think I would have been making movies with my friends if it wasn't for the fact that we were just a big Star Trek fans. So a big shout out to my other friend, Rich Previtt, who lives down, and I know he'll be watching this podcast. So he will definitely at some point when he comes home from Virginia want to participate. Because he and we still, talk about, and we were the ones who did the movies together, and he does a really good Scotty imitation, by the way. So, but literally, I think we're in this room today because of my love of Star Trek and the influence it had on my life.
All right. So, I'm Rick. So I actually have an interesting relationship with Star Trek, which, if I actually told, if I had actually said what it was, Rich would probably yell at me. So we'll see what he thinks about this. My introduction to Star Trek was Voyager,
Okay.
because that came on Spike TV during the early 2000 or mid 2000s, every day at about 4 p.m. And I'd get home from school, I'd watch 2 episodes of Voyager because it'd be 2 episodes back to back.
Right.
I was like, wow, this is actually pretty damn good. I actually like this. And then the reason why I did this podcast is because I'm like, well, nobody really, talks about Star Trek. Well, now that Paramount and they've reinvigorated it a little
for
bit,
sure.
the conversations are a little bit more common. But back then, it was just I got nobody to talk to about this. And then the original series was actually on. It wasn't Spike TV. It doesn't really matter. It might have been TBS or something.
Yeah.
And at around 7 a.m. every day. So I watched that. I think the first episode I actually saw was the one with the Hortas.
Okay. Yep.
So
The giant pizza.
yeah, yeah, the giant pizza that was a man kind of crawling around on the floor.
Poor guy.
Yeah, God, that must have been uncomfortable.
So, what are your guys' favorite Star Trek projects?
Well, I want to respond to his thing because, about Voyager. So I'm going to pick on Voyager from time to time. But to be honest, for me, I'm not a guy I'll watch Voyager, but it's not the one I'm going to pick. I can appreciate a lot of what Voyager accomplished. And I'm one of those people that, in general, as long as they're making new Star Trek, I'm fine. I'm a big fan of the newer stuff. I don't rip on it like a lot of people do. But I have a similar story. Like when I was in college, I would come home from school and Next Generation was on every day on Channel 29 at 2 episodes at 5 and 6. And I would get home and I would watch them every day, even though I'd already watched them. I grew up, I was born in 1967, so I don't remember when Star Trek was on originally. But as soon as it went off the air, it immediately went into syndication. So growing up, my brothers and I watched Star Trek every single day on TV around the house during the summertime. And then I just stayed with it. Obviously made some goofy movies with my friends. But in terms of my favorite show, Deep Space Nine, without a doubt, is my favorite Star Trek show. I will reference it way too much because I just love it. I love what they did. And when we get to Deep Space Nine, I'll talk about the importance, I think, in terms of television production. I really like the newer stuff a lot. Discovery is my least favorite of the new stuff. I loved Picard. It got better as it went. But now I'm watching Strange New Worlds, and to me, it's appointment TV. It's really what is Star Trek. I think, and even the people that are combative about Star Trek, I think we all really like Strange New Worlds. It's really bringing the fan base back together, which is what we need nowadays in our lovely world of social media.
Yeah, I got to see the first episode, and I gotta say, I can't wait until we get to that in 4 or 5 years.
Our 5-year mission to explore
Strange New Worlds.
To explore Strange New Worlds.
Our 5-year mission to explore strange new series.
Yeah.
So, with that all that out of the way, let's get to our first. So we will be talking about the episodes in order of broadcast.
Yes.
Um,
what about the cage? Someone's out there right now yelling at us.
we will definitely get to the cage. It's part for those of you who are unaware of how the original series went. The cage was addressed in the menagerie, which will be its own. It's probably going to end up being its own episode. A lot happens.
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot, because I think we have a lot to discuss when we get to the cage, because the cage is canon. So everything that happens in the original pilot of the cage is considered canon. It's actually brought back in some of the new shows that are airing now, the elements of it, and obviously it's the inspiration. The cage is the inspiration for the show Strange New Worlds. And But I think it will make a lot of sense if we just explore the cage and the two-part episode, the menagerie, and the relationship between Spock and Pike when we get to that, in obviously a few episodes. And then obviously they ordered a second pilot, which was unheard of at the time, because obviously we'll talk about all that later. But then they decided not to air Where No Man Has Gone Before as the new pilot as the first episode. NBC officials decided to air The Man Trap instead. And I as we talk about the episode, I'm going to give you some commentary. I think I'll give you my opinion why I think that was a good idea.
Yeah, they definitely chose to air the Where No Man Has Gone Before. Like, that was a third episode in broadcast, so
Right.
but we'll get to that. But so The Man Trap. So we'll probably do a brief synopsis of the episode.
We could read right off of the VHS
yeah,
tape.
You can read right off of the VHS tape from
which has been sitting in my basement.
Rich's personal collection. When the Enterprise landing party arrives on planet M113 to give a routine medical examination to Robert and Nancy Crater, a nightmare unfolds when several members die.
Which is pretty every episode of Star Trek.
Every trace of salt mysteriously removed from their bodies. That's actually kind of a spoiler for the episode. We don't learn that for a little bit. Since McCoy was once deeply in love with Nancy, he's especially concerned for her safety. However, the real Nancy Crater is already dead. A being has taken her form and needs salt to survive. Because Crater's supply is gone, it has only one source, the crew of the Enterprise. So I would
If
have
you
said
had not watched this
yeah.
episode and you read this box, there was no point to buy the VHS anymore. But it is a nice synopsis for our purposes.
That's what I was gonna say. They just spoiled the entire episode in the back of the
and
VHS.
this is how it ends.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, that
It's like
was-
what? It's like movie trailers nowadays. They get the whole movie right in the movie trailer.
that was the entire episode, actually. They didn't spoil the ending, I guess. Spoiler, the crew of the Enterprise makes it.
Yeah, that's good.
And continues to...
Somehow.
Yeah, somehow the crew... air date, September 8th, 1966.
Wasn't even born yet.
So, yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, I wasn't born yet either.
I was close. I would think probably my mother would have been expecting with that.
Now, was this before or after Batman?
We're on around kind of an overlap. Those shows are on around the same time.
We're talking about the original Batman here?
You know, you're talking about Adam West and stuff. Yeah, I believe. I think the show. I think Batman would have come out first, and this is 66, 67, 68, or whatever it was. I think Batman is like mid 60s. Very campy, but I mean, because I think that show, the Green Hornet, those shows are on during this time frame.
Right.
They're already on and established. So I actually watched this. What I'm going to do is because obviously I've seen these episodes 8,000 times. So I actually am rewatching these episodes to gain new insight, because now I want to podcast about them. So I'm doing my research. So I watched Man Trap. Do you want me to just throw something out?
Yeah, so let's just start at the beginning of the episode. So they arrive on the planet, and we see Nancy, who is obviously the monster at this point. So they all see a different person.
I like this concept that the alien has the ability to kind of obviously there's some inconsistencies because it's 1960s television, but my understanding of the monster is that the monster is really tricking your brain. So it's projecting, it's not actually taking the form in a sense. It's actually, it's an illusion. It's not like a true changeling like Odo in my mind. I feel like this is more, it's creating it's kind of a perception field, so to speak, to steal from Star Trek. So they're seeing what their brain is telling them to see, is what this creature's ability is, which is kind of a unique concept. I think that's a pretty creative concept for the 60s.
Yeah, and I think later on they kind of expunge on it, because they all see a different thing,
Right.
and then the creature essentially learns, oh wait, I can't I'm appearing differently to these people, and then
Right.
like coalesces its appearance into
It adjusts.
Yeah,
It's adjusts so it can do it's how it survives. And that's interesting because obviously Captain, the first person we see is this younger woman, and McCoy's seeing her, and as he admits through his love for her. So his perception, the way she's pulling from his brain or however she senses that, this much younger version that he had the hots for. And then Kirk expects that she would be a little bit older, so he sees her as just being a little bit older looking. And then the other crewman, who used to be on a soap opera, my wife noticed.
Darnell.
Darnell, he died. He was on a soap opera like Guiding Light or something many years later. And my wife always loves that. But he sees her as some hot girl that he saw on somebody's pleasure planet, which is kind of funny. Like, so that kind of gets himself in trouble.
Yeah, can I just say, like, the fact I don't think it would ever occur to me to see a woman and be like, "Oh, I just saw you. You look exactly like a girl I saw at the strip club." You know, like
Maybe he's got a little bit of an obsession,
it's
poor
like-
Darnell, and that leads to problems for poor Darnell. The funniest thing that I think was is that already you see that there are issues with, like it's tough to watch these shows now in a sense because of like the sexism. It is in many ways like this show. If you think of the movie, the TV show Mad Men, this show could have been called Spacemen. Like it's literally like perception, men, women perceptions in the 1960s, and you have to watch shows like this through that lens and not get caught up. Oh, that is sexualized, and Gene Roddenberry liked girls in the short skirts and all that stuff. We can the world, we still have those problems today. So it's not like we're so much, we've so evolved. Like, we still have those problems today. And that's why film and actors and writers are on strike right now because of the sexism of Hollywood. But this was time. This is the way it was for the But I think, like, this interaction is really good. Like, it creates a great alien right off the bat. A very not a typical alien that you see in the campy 1950s B movies.
Yeah, like it's very much like, to talk about your point on like the sexism of the time. Like, for the time, like it was pretty progressive show. Like in terms of like women's rights and stuff. Like Uhura, for example, outranked
A black officer?
Yeah,
That's
black
a woman?
female officer who outranked several people on the bridge crew. They don't, probably deliberately, they don't make a point to like explicitly say that she outranks people like Sulu and Chekhov later on, but like she does. She's the lieutenant.
Yeah, for sure.
So back to the episode. So Darnell gets led off by her, right? She comes out still appearing to be this woman, and he's like stricken because he's apparently incapable of controlling himself, which gets him into trouble.
Well, if he's that obsessed with the woman from the stripper planet, then you kind of understand that he probably has a little bit some impulse control issues.
Gets his salt sucked out, which we don't find out until later. She claims that he ate a poison fruit, right? So this is where we get the first stirrings of like what's actually going on, because like even though like this, so we find him dead, right? He's dead.
He's got the suction cuppy things on his face.
Yeah, Kirk shows up. He's like, "What happened here?" Oh, he ate something poisonous. And then she says something very specific to her husband. It was, "You asked him about the salt, right?"
Right.
That is the first stirrings, in my opinion, because like it's like, what do you? This man is dead. Why are you talking about salt?
Right.
Right.
And McCoy at that point also realizes that she looks different now, and she says, "Doc McCoy, Leonard, you act like you don't believe me," and he's like, "No, it's something else." Again, they're intelligent people, like so he's processing. Wait, she looks different. Like when I first saw her. And that is the theme that hangs around. It literally leads to a fight with like kind of a, Kirk's got to kind of smack him down. Like, do your effing job. Like my guy's dead.
Yeah, that's he has quit worrying about your lost love. I have a dead man here.
Yeah, do your job.
I want to know why.
Right.
He's because McCoy's just in there like
plum.
He's just like
His nickname.
He's just literally sitting next to a dead body, like, wow, I can't believe she was so much younger than.
And that's when they get
Yeah.
back to the ship and they're doing kind of an analyst or whatever on his body on the ship. And I want to say one thing, like, you know what? Did you notice that by this episode, which is I think would have been originally the third episode, but I feel like these characters are already pretty well defined. Like early on, how many TV shows do we watch nowadays where it takes like a season for the characters really to come into their own? Where I feel like this show is very well written, and we already get this is Spock, this is McCoy, this is Uhura, this is Kirk. Their characters are pretty well established. Kirk's sense of humor, all that stuff, like his friendship with Bones, it already makes sense. Like it already works. Like it already feels like, well, this show's already 20 episodes in.
Yeah, I mean, we like in this episode we get the inspiration for the Uhura and Spock in the 2009
Oh,
movies.
definitely, yes.
Because like she's just in there, she's just like,
Yeah.
have you what would you say to a pretty woman like me or something like
Yeah.
that? And like Spock, we get this instantly. We know what Spock's about.
We get a nice secondary character scene, and she says something like, "Tell me what it feels like on a night in a Vulcan moon," and he's like, and he's totally unresponsive because obviously he's Spock, and he's like, "Miss Uhura, like Vulcan has no moon," and she's like, "I'm not surprised," because like obviously the moon is a huge source of inspiration. For love sonnets and all that type of stuff. And they don't have one. So I feel like that's a pretty smart writing. That it's kind of funny, ironically, that Vulcan does. And that's probably when they established in the canon that Vulcan doesn't have any moons. Because this is early on in the canon. The show's like 2 weeks old. So they're establishing so much that leads to the next 50, 60 years of history for this franchise. It's pretty cool, like how much they've been good at maintaining that.
Oh yeah, like he like we get like Spock's just like Iceman like immediately, and we're like, oh okay, so his species is like they don't experience emotion in the same way that humans do.
And as you'll see when you get to Strange New Worlds, that they're doing a nice job with the new actor playing Spock to capture some of Spock's efficiency as a Vulcan. Like, Lieutenant Uhura, your transmission report, blah blah blah, was like wrong. Like it's like he's very businesslike. And he's very serious about who he is and his responsibilities. And that's pretty cool. And then you get the opposite of that. Like the next time that Kirk sees McCoy, he apologizes for snapping. Hey, man, you in the mood for an apology? He's like, that you were right. I should have been focusing on my job. I like the fact that they can have an argument but they're still they're still good friends. And I do think that this is important because, again, growing up, like I learned about friendship and camaraderie by watching Star Trek.
Oh yeah, like it's very interesting to see like characters like right off the bat. Like I feel like in a lot of modern television, it's like these people are meeting for the first time sometimes, and it's like I'm Bones. Like that's how it was in the 2009 movie. They all met for the first time, and like we got all this stuff to work out.
And that was fine in that movie because it was supposed to be establishing the canon in a sense that like that's how McCoy and Kirk met in that movie, which I think that scene is that's my favorite scene in that movie. Like when space is a disease, and like the actor, I can't think of the guy who plays Billy Butcher on The Boys. He's so good.
Carl Urban.
Thank you. Carl Urban is so good that Leonard Nimoy says when he saw Carl Urban's performance of McCoy, he cried because it reminded him so much of DeForest Kelley, who had passed away by that point. So, I mean, like, but, all I got left is my bones. And so we're assuming that's kind of the genesis of where, because only Kirk calls him Bones. Yeah. Nobody else calls him Bones. It's his nickname for his friend.
The wife took all the money in the whole damn planet in the divorce.
That's a pretty good Carl Urban as Leonard McCoy. So.
Yeah, and then, like, but it fits into Gene Roddenberry's like vision for what he wanted Star Trek to be at the time, like because we don't ever get these introductory character moments because he didn't want them. Like he wanted the show to be basically like just he wanted the show to be episodic, like in its fullest intent, like
Yes.
which I'm not sure how much like decision he had in like when things started to get more arcy, like in TNG especially, but like
I think by then he had been kind of phased out and he was older, and I think he passed away. But also, I think producers at that time were moving towards episodic, away from episodic to more. And this is a big discussion that I have with Christian, my other son, Christian, my son Christian, when we do our podcast about a lot of people don't like. We call them one-offs now on these shows. But I feel like the one-offs are so important because this is where you get to really explore characters. Yeah. And I love the silly episodes on a show because it gets a chance that, like the one where it's not every episode shouldn't be about, oh my God, like the world's about to end. Oh my God, we saved the world again. Like I kind of like the one episode just like they went to the pub. And and silliness happened, and now their friendship, like those things are really cool. Like we got a 26 episode or whatever episodes there were, 26, whatever it is, like and where we have time to really get to know characters because we're not doing a 6 to 12 episode arc on a streaming service.
Yeah, I mean, like we get introduced to them, like we learn enough. Each individual episode of Star Trek, they give us enough character to really sort of tell who these people are and what they're about. And through watching additional episodes, and it doesn't matter which episodes you watch, that was intentional on Roddenberry's part, but you get more and more details about them, which we'll get to when we get to.
I have some fun stuff that I wanted to throw out before we get too far. Like we get the first. He doesn't say he's dead, Jim, but there is a dead.
This man is dead,
This
Jim.
man is dead, Jim. Like you start to see like some of the stuff that's like in the lore. There's also a line where Sulu's in, and he talks to Yeoman Rand, and he says, "Great Bird of the Galaxy," and Great Bird of the Galaxy was the nickname for Gene Roddenberry. So there's a weird, like I love like that. I'm sure that's not why that line's in there because he didn't get called that till many years later. But I love the fact in this first episode that we saw on TV, we get Gene Roddenberry's eventual nickname. Yeah. And that's, to me, like, this is why I love the freaking franchise so much because of this type of stuff. And you talked about Uhura, and we get to that scene now that the creature's on board. Mm-hmm. And the creature takes an image from her brain of the type of man she would be attracted to, which is really freaking scary if you think about that. And it speaks Swahili. Now, again, the Swahili's in her head. He doesn't really look like, the creature doesn't really look like that guy, and it's probably not really, but for our audience's purposes, we're seeing it from that perspective of her acting, of her character. And I mean, that's like, I don't know, hearing Swahili on TV in the 1960s probably was pretty damn cool, right?
Oh yeah, like that's like how many people would even know what Swahili was at that point?
Right.
Like she's just like, oh, you're speaking Swahili. I imagine most of the audience was just like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, what is that? And she's not an American. She's an African. Like, she's not an African American. I maybe her character is. I don't remember that. But clearly the cast is supposed to give you a sense they're from different parts of the planet. Right. And that obviously is a thing that we'll get to, like why they bring in Chekhov eventually. And Sulu, who's supposed to be Japanese and all that stuff. So, I mean, I think those things are really super important.
Yeah, Chekhov had to have been insane for the time. Like, you're talking about height of Cold War. Like, the Soviet Union still like very threatening at that point. Yeah. Like nowhere near their collapsing time.
Oh,
and
for sure.
You got this Russian in the show.
What else do you want to bring in here?
I had so when they get back down to the planet to investigate things, they just kind of send like the skinny dude. I don't remember his name, but like he's just like
Lieutenant Green.
Yeah, Lieutenant Green. Yeah, they're just like go find her, and they just send him off alone. And it's like, well, okay, bye, Green.
Yeah, you kind of like know like when I was watching the first part of the episode, and the guy goes like, "Who's the guy in the blue shirt?" My son's like, because he had not seen this episode. He's like, "Who's the guy in the blue shirt?" I said, "It doesn't matter. He's gonna die." And he found that amusing, that like how much characters die on Star Trek. And I go, yeah, that's kind of a joke nowadays. Obviously, the red shirts are a real specific joke, a meme that's known. But I mean, like in general, like. But the other thing is, compared to Next Generation and the other shows, maybe Voyager they couldn't kill people because they were in the other state. They couldn't kill they couldn't kill a guy every week.
It's only 150.
There's only 100. You're right. They run out of people. But they also are on the edge of this is not a civilized universe. This is the Old West. That's why Roddenberry referred to the show as what do you call it? Like some show to the stars. Like it was a show that was on that they I forget the name of the show that was. He wanted you to feel like it was out. So the universe isn't established. It's a dangerous place. So.
Yeah, like this monster is just like it's just crazy dangerous how like it can kill you instantly, and they state later on that it can actually paralyze you.
It's got hypnotic power. When it focuses on you with this little weird hand action thing, it freezes when we finally see it in its full attack mode with Captain Kirk, like in the last scene. So yes, it's got this hypnotic power. It obviously can read your mind, and then let's talk. Once the creature gets aboard the ship, they realize they got a problem, but then they realize that Green's dead. Yeah. But Green had beamed up to the ship and did all those interactions with Rand, and is trying to grab the salt shaker, and we can see Sulu like taking care of plants, which we never see again, by the way. And
it does get referenced though, like in the Naked Time, he references botany, like
okay.
Sulu trying to get the guy into botany.
Oh, that's cool.
But real quick from the back when they were still on the planet, right after they'd found Green, and McCoy was like, I gotta find Nancy. Kirk tells him to stop thinking with his glands.
Yeah, that's great.
That is a great line for 66.
There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. I mean, I like when Spock and Kirk go down to the planet to try to find Crater, and he starts firing at him, and he's like, like, you're going to sacrifice yourself? And he's like, he's not trying to kill us. He's just trying to scare us. Yeah. And he's doing a pretty good job. And it's like, again, the people are shooting at you, and Kirk's still kind of like, he's making jokes. And like that just shows the bravado of why I think we all like Captain Kirk so much, because we all would want to be Captain Kirk. Let's be honest. Like he's pretty good looking, and he's got a ship, and he can fire phasers, and he's funny, and the women all fall in love with him in 12 minutes. It's a pretty cool, everybody falls in love with Captain Kirk. So.
Yeah, we kind of see the difference between Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner during that scene too. Well, first of all, I wanted to point out that shot when they beam down, and he's just staring at them from like just behind the rocks. He's just like this.
Yeah, right.
They just hold that shot. It's so funny.
It is like because he's just like because it's like it's a weird thing because he's like it. What's really cool about this episode is it's kind of monster. And then when they get back to the ship and they bring Crater back to the ship, now we get into the moral play finally. Yeah. And it's like...
He's like, this is the last of its kind,
Yeah. And he does the thing when he's stunned. He talks about the carrier pigeon and the buffalo. And it's funny because I don't think a lot of people were talking about endangered species in the 1960s.
No,
right?
Not really. Like
I don't think that was a thing. I remember in the 70s, maybe late 70s, early 80s, when we started talking about the bald eagle was going to go extinct, and obviously, but that was 15, 20 years later. Like, and nowadays we're very much worried about endangered species, but I don't think anybody was worried about endangered species in the 1960s. And we look at an Earth that has lost a lot of its creatures, the buffalo. And I love the moral play about the analogy between this creature and the buffalo. And I think suddenly now we get a moral play. And I think this is a great first episode because it really establishes what Star Trek's all about.
Yeah, it was like at the time, like you got to remember that like when they talk about the buffalo, we don't really think about the buffalo being endangered these days, but like in the 60s, this was after they had almost been entirely wiped out. Like
from our own actions, they weren't naturally like we murdered them. like for fun and sport.
Yeah,
Like-
that's kind of like the historical context behind that particular line. Like at the time, this was, we've had like what 60 years to recover the
Right.
buffalo population
Right.
since then. This was right after they'd been almost wiped
So
out.
go to my camera because I want to say my hot take. If we were making TikToks, I don't know if we are. Star Trek has always been woke.
It has.
It's the original woke, right?
I mean, yeah.
People get mad at Star Trek. Oh, it's woke now. No, have you watched the show? It's not just about fire and phasers. That's important too, so people want to buy toys and watch it. But it's a moral play. And some of the episodes coming up, like the whole thing's the moral play from 12 seconds in.
Oh, yeah.
Like Conscience of the King and all those things that are coming, like, the parallels between Star Trek and like, Shakespeare are huge, the tie-ins. And
That's the entirety of episode 2 is just talking about, children, basically, just the sociopathy of children who aren't supervised. But, like...
what else you got, like, in terms... I like when they get into the boardroom scene. And the fake McCoy, because obviously the creature takes McCoy's... There's another funny line there, and he's like, I can't sleep. And Kirk's like, take one of those red pills you gave me last week. You'll sleep. I just always loved that William Shatner already had the character, like, bam, nailed. And then, obviously, the creature takes McCoy's position and is walking around, and he's kind of using its skills to gather information, which is pretty smart when it goes up to the bridge. And then eventually he has to go to the briefing with Crater. Crater's sitting next to this creature and knows that it's the creature.
Yeah,
Because we established the scene that sorry, I cut you off.
I was just about to say, he says in the, Kirk's in the boardroom, and he's like, would you know if the creature was in the room with you? And he's like, yeah. Like, I don't think he says yes, but I think he heavily implies it.
I can.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
he does say
it definitely, eventually, it's not right away. I think he eventually says, can you identify this creature when you see it? And he goes, I can. That's what he says, I can. And are you going to help us destroy it? Sorry, can't. And he's like, because it's not just, Kirk applies it with like that it's his, kind of his plaything. Because she can take his form and his best friend, and he could be a hot woman. That creature can take any form, and he can basically implies that he's just like it's his toy. But there might be some aspect of truth to that. But there's also the truth to it that his science background is that he's whatever his science background is that he feels the importance of saving this creature at all costs, even over the cost of some of the people on the Enterprise.
Even over the cost of his own wife.
Yeah.
That thing killed his wife, and
he
he
doesn't
loves
even
it.
remember, like, 1 year, maybe 2. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like it's well written. Like,
yeah, like he loves that thing. Like whether or not like that love is romantic is kind of like nebulous in the episode. It seems like, but like he has a lot of care for it, and I think just by its actions, at least until the Nancy creature, I guess we'll just call it Nancy. And at least until it fixates on McCoy,
right.
It seemed to have loved him as well, or at least
that's
saw
really
him as
because the creature does. Nancy, as the creature says, the rest of them, they don't like. You have such deep feelings for me, so clearly the creature's ability to read minds or sense perception or whatever it is, even over Crater, it's now shifted its focus and love and needs to McCoy, which I didn't catch that until you said that.
Yeah, like it's very
really good point.
It seems to feed on affection.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't. I don't think it appreciates affection because like as soon as it attached itself to McCoy emotionally, I guess you'd call it. It just killed Crater. Like it didn't need him anymore. Like it wasn't even really I don't even think it really had a second thought about it. It didn't even care.
I think you're right about that.
So it's like it doesn't need it. It doesn't need to love. It needs to be loved. It seems.
Sure.
Like it needs to be the object of affection. Is what I think the writing kind of implies there.
I would agree with that. Yep.
And I don't like even when it came back to his room after it had killed Crater. It came back to McCoy's room, who's still unconscious from the. I'm not sure if it's the red pills that did it or if it's a creature. I've watched the episode twice in a row now, and I'm not really sure whether or not the creature had actually put him to sleep.
No, he put him to sleep with the pills, because I noticed this in the shot when she turns into him. You can see on the counter, and this is why the show's well made, on the counter behind him, there is the bottle open, and there are a few loose pills on the nightstand or the headstand. So clearly, and she gets some water. So my assumption is that she kind of stays with him as he drugs out and goes to sleep.
Those are
And
some
then when
pills.
he wakes up, he doesn't really understand all that he's missed.
Yeah.
You know, I love the thing that they do with Spock in this episode too, because it's the first time we realize that the Vulcan anatomy is very different. Because the creature tries to suck the salt out of Spock. Spock's line is like, my ancestors spawned in a very different ocean. My biology is very different. So it can't take the salt from some aliens, clearly Vulcans in particular.
Yeah, I think it implies that he might not even have salt in his blood.
Yeah.
But we also learn that his blood is green because the creature hits him.
Yeah,
when,
it's got a nice welt.
Yeah,
on
he's
his
got that
forehead there.
cut on his welt, He's got that cut on his forehead, and there's green stuff around it, which I think.
And it's Spock's the only one who kind of realized there's something wrong with McCoy in this scene. So that's, again, we established that Spock's pretty damn smart, and that he's I wondered about McCoy. That's why I went with him to do the truth serum, which is kind of a funny thing. They're just going to drug the guy and make him tell the truth. It doesn't seem like that's a good idea, but
Yeah, Kirk. So the finale of the episode. Real quick. So the difference between Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner, right? Leonard Nimoy. I don't know if you probably knew this, but you might not. He was actually in the military. And
I don't think I knew that.
And you can kind of see this, when they're fighting, the Doctor on the planet. Kirk's kind of crawling around on his hands and knees, right? Between Leonard Nimoy is actually
doing more of a military, traditional military.
Crawling around
I guess I didn't notice that before. You're probably right.
Yeah, I really like that little I don't even think it was a purposeful detail.
It's probably just
it's just he just knows how to crawl around on his belly, basically.
Definitely. That's interesting. Cool. Yeah.
But on to the finale, right? We get our first double fist punch.
Yes.
Multiple.
Spock comes in after the creature has hypnotized Captain Kirk, and McCoy's holding a phaser, and he doesn't really get it. And he's like, "That's not Nancy. It's not Nancy." And he does 7, I counted, double fist, could Nancy take this? And it's funny because nowadays, if you just isolated Mr. Spock beating up a woman, it's a great meme, or something for your text messaging. But you see 5 on camera and 2 there's a cutaway of McCoy going, "Nancy, what are you doing?" And he's like, "No, don't kill her." And Spock, Kirk's still in that he's still entranced. He's in a trance, and then she just whacks Spock, and he flies across the room and knocks all the books down.
Yeah, and then we see, I think it's right after this, we see the creature for the first time in the
I will tell you, as an 8-year-old, that was effing scary.
Yeah, that was a great costume. I wish if I had been better prepared, I probably would have had images to throw up on screen or something like that. But that thing was a great costume. It had these long tentacle fingers that and honestly they attached to Kirk's face pretty well. It wasn't perfect. It was the 60s, but this was all practical costume stuff. The tentacles kind of just
I think the gloves were made longer enough to give the hands they could do more of a job on the face. I agree with that. And then it's really again McCoy's forced to kill it.
Yeah, and we get a pretty decent showing from William Shatner here. It felt like he was genuinely being hurt by that.
Yeah, it's a pretty and he's good at it. Ah!
Yeah.
You know, like, and you got to say, like, you got to love the music for this time period. I love the music in the background. Like, it's very dramatic. It fits the franchise, and you know, I think we talk about music and franchises all the time. Star Wars, Superman, whatever it might be, Raiders of the Lost Ark, but James Bond. But like, this is the music for Star Trek is very iconic too. Especially the background fight scene music, all that stuff that everybody growing up watching the show knows.
Oh yeah,
Like it's over the top, but it's great for the genre.
yeah. Kirk on. I think the first time we get that particular battle music was Kirk versus Spock on with over T'Pol or T'Pol, not
the
T'Pol.
Vulcan music. Yeah, the beginning, first episode of season 2.
Yeah,
So,
and then
which we'll get to, obviously.
Futurama that references that music later on with.
So we're up to 7.
Yep.
We're up to 7 double fist pumps,
Yep.
punches already. So
There should be a counter on screen.
we are going to have to. We'll have to make that, and then we can just update it as we go.
Ding, ding,
So-
ding, 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 ding.
And then I like they get to the end, and they all feel bad about it. And then Kirk's just sitting there, and he's like, "I was thinking about the buffalo." And I like
Yeah.
that they didn't just like, well, you know, some episodes they certainly do that. They just forget about everything that just happened.
Yeah.
But this one is important because they all kind of like acknowledge that they had to kill this endangered species off. So
Yeah, like we had this creature. This is the first time that Starfleet, in I don't even think it was. I think it was Earth Fleet at the time, but.
Yeah.
This is the first time we've seen them encounter like this creature, and they just immediately kill it. It's the last of their kind.
yeah, that's kind of funny. My son made the same comment. He's like, "Well," I'm like, "Well, you know, I guess they could. We don't really have a lot of things like tricorders established well in this episode, or even like we have the phaser on stun. So maybe like they could have tried to stun it or whatever it is. I don't know. But like I feel like okay, fine, but you kill the creature because that's what you did in the 1960s.
Yeah.
You know, like what are you going to put it in? You know, it's an interesting, and I think the point is the irony that they had to kill it, and the fact that McCoy had to kill like somebody that looked like the love of his life.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
It was interesting that he still like even though it had already revealed itself to be real,
Right.
he still hesitated. He was like still like, I don't want to kill this. It's
and he has to say,
Yeah.
you know, God forgive me or whatever he
Yeah.
says, you know, like forgive me or whatever, however he says it. And I think that's, and it's interesting because Kirk doesn't kill the bad guy. Spock doesn't kill the bad guy. The Doctor, Hippocratic Oath and all that stuff, has to kill the bad guy. And it's literally tears him apart, which, I mean, like, that's pretty good. By next week, he's fine. But, you know, like, that's how episodic works.
yeah.
So,
next week we're
Really
back
good
to
episode. I mean, a really good. I understand why now they decided to make this the first episode. I
Yeah.
think it's a good way to get people involved with it and get excited for what's going to come next week.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to where No Man Has Gone Before, we're going to discuss, but it's not too expositional. Like there's not like, well, this is Earth Force and Earth
Right.
Fleet or whatever they were
Right.
calling it at the time. Yada yada. It was just very simple story.
Yep.
Like we get introduced to the characters, very well written, encapsulated story that
Well,
could
it's
be
tough
understood.
it's tough with that episode when we get to it. That's episode 3. That'll be our next episode. We'll get to that one. Because we're missing a lot of the key characters.
Mm-hmm.
We only have 2 or 3 of the legacy 4 in a sense of the legacy characters. We've got a different Doctor. We don't have Sulu. We don't have and it was a pilot. So I think there's lots changed between that and when they finally started producing the actual show for the season 1. So we'll address that when we get to that. How far are we in?
48 minutes.
I think we can knock off Charlie X, can't
Alright,
we?
yeah,
Might as
like-
well. I mean, this first episode is going to be a little longer probably
Yeah.
because we had to do a lot at the beginning. I think in future episodes we'll get right into the episodes.
Yeah, so
But I watched Charlie X last night.
yep, so did I. I rewatched it last night.
Yep.
So first off, he doesn't have to do it to use his powers, but he just seems to do it when he wants to. His power face. He just gets this,
Yeah, the glare.
like it.
Angry
but-
eyes.
Rich, do it again for the camera.
It'd be great if we could have sound. I don't have. It's not the right sound effect. It's like. But
Yeah.
they have like a sound. They do it, like they did it. And but you're right. It's not all the time. It's only occasionally.
But
It's it's when it was for dramatic effect.
Although it works with the character too, because like if you really tick off a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or whatever, what face are they gonna make?
They
at
make
you?
that face.
Yeah, that I'm angry face.
This is an interesting episode in so many ways. Like, and I think it was not my favorite. This is not an episode I would stop and watch on a regular basis if I was rewatching. But at the same time, I'm glad I did, because I did. Now that I'm reanalyzing these episodes for the podcast, I'm catching good stuff now. Like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a powerful episode. Like it's very much like just as I mentioned before. It's like this. It's about childhood in a weird way. Like it's
Yeah.
about coming of age. I think it's an important episode in that regard.
So
like,
let me do a 20-second wrap up for the episode.
Gotcha.
So the episode is the Enterprise runs into a small freighter with 20 crew, and they are transporting to him a teenager who's 17, who was the only person that survived from a crash when he was 3 years old, and somehow this kid, is grown up by himself for 14 years on a planet, and he seems like he's okay, and he does have some family on like Earth Colony 5, and they're going to bring because the freighter doesn't, it's a slow ship. There's not a lot of resources. He's going to bring the Enterprise will bring Charlie to his family on, and right away, like the problem is, it turns out that he survived with the aid of an alien race, who have given him powers to do essentially kind of Q-ish from Next Generation, pretty much whatever he wants to do, because that's what that race has, and that's a race that they already know exists. So it's not like we find out that this race existed. We know, the crew knows that there is a legendary race that supposedly existed and maybe had goofy powers like this. And then they realized that Charlie eventually has these powers, and now they're stuck. Very early on in this episode, they realize that they have a teenager with way too much power.
Yeah, they used a lot of they do this a lot throughout season 1, but it was like they used a lot of dramatic irony in early Star Trek, where basically if you're not familiar with what that is, it's basically the audience knows what's going on, but the characters around this central focus don't know. So like we the audience immediately know he's got something going on, right? He does that within the first 10 seconds of the episode.
Right.
But what I find interesting about Charlie is like he is a vehicle to examine like a lot of the way we interact with each other. Like, we get like he comes onto the ship, right? And he sees, like, this is one of my notes here. He's like watching these two guys working, and the one guy just goes like, "Good job," smacks the other guy in the butt, and he's like, "Oh, okay, so that's how you show affection towards somebody." And he does this to Yeoman. What is her name? Yeoman Rand. You probably already said that to, and she's like, "What are you doing?
Right.
That's not right."
But he immediately, the first female that he sees in his life is Yeoman Rand, so he immediately, which makes sense, would immediately be in love with her. And she's nice to him, too. Yeah. So the first female he meets is obviously pretty good looking, and she's, and he immediately becomes connected to her. And I think that's an interesting thing, because we all have that first crush, and they even talk about that within the episode. And he grew up for 14 years with no affection. So it's an interesting, what would happen to you if you were isolated and you grew up with, and he craves it. He wants to be human, but he's got these powers. And obviously probably whatever happened to him on that other ship was that they're probably a bunch of jerks to him. And they might have been nice, but then he immediately imagine hanging out with a bunch of guys on a freighter. Like they're not the Federation. They're not like Starfleet, where they're just a different type of crew. These guys just transport cargo. Like they're going to be kind of like they're like guys working on a plant. They're not going to be supportive to like us teenagers. They're going to pick on them.
Yeah, especially since he's just like really strange. Like like for like what we're expecting a fully grown man to behave, like he's very strange. Like so, these guys are going to be like, "What the heck are you doing?" So, but I think that sets up the relationship he has with Captain Kirk very well because he really doesn't have any practical reason to respect Captain Kirk, but it's just the way that he carries himself that makes
Well,
him.
the first thing Kirk really kind of says to him in that first scene is, you're interrupting, and we consider that rude. And it's not mean.
Yeah.
It's just matter of fact. Like, and so immediately he kind of starts to immediately identify Kirk as a father type figure, and Kirk's Kirk is whatever he doesn't want that role. I don't know what that hit was.
I had that queued up because I was going to say the next time you talked about Yeoman Rand, I was just going to play that.
What is it that you played?
Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye.
Oh, that's pretty much, yeah.
Because I had it queued up because you were talking
It's funny,
about
you know what's funny about that? Because I don't know anything about the military or the Navy specifically, certainly as a kid. So I just assumed that all yeomans were hot girls. That's
kind of why I had it
Because
queued
Captain
up.
Kirk had a hot yeoman, and then we had a couple other yeomans, and I'm like, oh, I thought. And then finally, when I got older, I'm like, oh no, yeomans are like dudes most of the time on a naval ship. He just happened to have a hot yeoman, even though she got that weird fake wig.
No, but you said he was like instantly in love with her, so I had it queued up to be played every time you talk about it.
Yeah, it was like it's really interesting that Captain Kirk just admonishes him, like not in a, as you said, not in a mean way, just as more of a matter of fact way, and like, you really get into the importance of having like an authority figure in your life.
Well, I'm a parent.
Yeah.
And I think my boys I raised my boys pretty well to have respect. Like a simple, quick story like that was kind of intentional. I never referred to them as their mother. I always referred to them as my wife because I want them to have when they were. I mean, I don't have to do that now because they're 22 and 24. They'd be like, "Shut the fuck up!" If I said it to them now. But like back when they were 4 and 6. I wanted them to understand the relationship between a man and a woman. I even said to one of my children one time, I'm like, listen, like she was here before you. Like she's my priority. Like I think like that Kirk has those kinds of things. Once he realizes the role he's trying, and he's not good at it.
Oh, no.
He's not a good being a father. He doesn't have children. So like he makes a couple mistakes, like taking Charlie to the gym's a bad idea. Yeah. But he doesn't know any better because he's a military dude.
I mean, at the point where he takes him to the gym, like he's starting to get like
they're starting to get nervous. They realize that he has abilities.
Yeah, but he's not really certain about what's going on. Like you get this. I believe he demonstrated that he can. I think it was like just the destroying the chess pieces at this point.
Yeah, he melts the chess pieces. He turns the meatloaf into turkeys. There's things like that are like they're very low level things, and they think that he knew that the ship was destroyed, but they don't realize because the ship. Once they're out of his sphere of influence, they try to call the Enterprise and warn them, and he happens to be on the bridge at that time. And Kirk didn't even really want him to come to the bridge. So they even write that well that, like, why would Kirk let him on the bridge? He says, I want to come. And Kirk's like, all right, I'll be nice. I'll let him come to the bridge. And while he happens to be on the bridge, the ship tries to call him. So he makes the ship go away, in a sense. He makes the thing and the ship just blows up. They don't necessarily realize that he could have that much influence.
Although he did hint at it. He was like, is the ship okay? Or what? He said something. He's like, he said something that would imply that he knew something was wrong with the ship. And Spock was, I don't think Kirk caught it, but Spock
does. And I think that's supposed to be Spock's more perspective or whatever. He's gonna catch those things, perspective.
Yeah, but so after this, we finally get to Charlie. Fun fact, by the way. That guy that Kirk is talking to, when Charlie walks up behind him about the meatloaf or whatever, I want you to make it so that it seems like real turkey. That guy is Gene Roddenberry, and that's his only appearance.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that is Gene Roddenberry.
So there's an interesting side story with that then, because he's supposed to be the chef.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when they do Star Trek Enterprise later on, they mention the chef, but we never see the chef. So I'm wondering if that's a weird little nod to the fact that Gene Roddenberry played the chef once and then we never saw the chef again. I wonder if there's like some lore behind the scenes that we're not aware of. But I did not know that. See, this is cool. That's a brand new thing I never knew before.
Yeah, that was Roddenberry, and then he says that the meatloaf has been replaced with real turkeys. That was also Roddenberry.
And it's funny because I've commented on a couple fan sites over the years that we still have holidays in the future. We still have Thanksgiving because they mentioned Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Even though we don't have probably a lot of like I feel like religion's a lesser thing in the future in this universe, but we still have things like Thanksgiving.
Yeah, yeah, like and it's just kind of like it wasn't like a Thanksgiving episode. It was just like it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So another thing I liked about this episode, like they kind of address being horny. Like he's like I'm hungry all over, you know, and it's like. You're like, I guess that is how you'd describe it if you didn't really, like, know. If you were just, like, a 17-year-old who didn't really grow up with people, didn't know.
Well, imagine having a conversation with, as a father, with your teenage son when he has that first heartbreak. Mm-hmm. And Kirk has to have that conversation with him. Sometimes, Charlie, between a man and a woman, there are other things. Like, there's a million things you can have in this universe, and there's a million things you can't. And Yeoman Rand's one of them, because she's mine, all mine. She's my Yeoman. Back off. I'll pick you up and carry you there.
He
Sorry. That's my inner William Shatner coming out.
Like, poor, whatever her name was, like the younger lady that Yeoman Rand introduced.
The girl.
Yeah, she's just like...
He really, when he decides to go full rogue, he does a lot of creepy-ass shit on that ship, by the way. Turns the one girl into a lizard.
That was her. Are
you all right? Lizard, like, turned her into a lizard, which is like, wow, that's kind of rude. I don't know why they picked lizard, but okay. He makes everybody stop laughing, and the girl's face is gone.
Just makes people disappear of like quite a few people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We just completely skipped over. The first time that happens, by the way, he's with Kirk in the gym, and Kirk's teaching him how to fight, and in typical like immature boy way, he's like he doesn't want to do something that looks kind of scary, like he does. Kirk does a shoulder roll, right? And that's actually Shatner doing that.
Yeah, like that. Actually, there's a lot of like in the early on. I think there's a lot of stuff where he did do a lot of his own stuff. Not all of it. There was a stunt double, but there's a lot of fight stuff where it is him.
Yeah, and we will get to that one because the remastered.
Yeah, you can tell.
It's rough.
You can tell.
I mean, it gets made fun of later on, even like before the remaster, but like it's very obvious.
No, they would go to a wide shot, and they would put in, Leslie. The guy who plays Leslie was his stunt double. So.
It's funny.
The guy starts laughing at him, and he just says...
just goes, hey, don't laugh at me, and then just boop, and then...
mean face, and then he's gone.
Yeah, and then Kirk's just like... He's just like...
Press some buttons over there, kid. Let's go.
Oh, sorry, I'll take that one back. He's just like...
Yeah, it's kind of an oh fuck moment. Like, this is... Wow, he's got a lot more power than we realize. We cannot bring him to Earth Colony 5.
Yeah, that's when he first is just like, we should definitely be careful about this. And he does that again with... And this is like where... we were talking earlier. I was like, they got drywall sets. So Charlie goes to Yeoman Rand's quarters against her, without permission. She's like... It's rude to enter people's quarters without permission, and he's just kind of like, immature. Like, it's uncomfortable, and it's meant to be uncomfortable.
Oh, for sure.
He's like, don't lock your door on me, Janice.
Yeah.
And so Kirk and she subtly like turns on the intercom and's like, Kirk and Spock run in there. And this is where we learn that the walls are drywall, because Kirk and Spock get knocked into the wall, and Spock kind of rolls to the side a little bit, and there's just a hole in the wall.
Oh, I don't think I ever noticed that. I'm going to have to go back and look for that hole now that you've noticed that you said that.
Yeah, it knocks a hole in the wall, which, those are presumably bulkheads, but it's fine because they notice it in the shot, and like I think they they kind of cut around that for the rest of the time.
Move his broken leg Spock body over.
And then at this point, Yeoman Rand slaps him, and this is when This is actually the beginning of. I think this is when Charlie just goes completely over the deep end.
Yes.
Makes her disappear, and then just runs out of the room, and that's
right.
We cut to him just. I think that's when he turns what's her face into a iguana.
Yeah, there's several scenes where he's just kind of like marching through the ship like angrily, and he knocks people over, and he turns her into a lizard. He makes the guy stop laughing, and the one we see the girl come around with no face. He turns the other woman into an old woman.
Yeah.
He's causing a lot of problems, and it's an interesting thing because they don't really know what to do. They try to stop the ship from going there, but he senses that. And then he's got a different attitude to this. I need to go there. And then he really kind of sits in his chair and he does all those kinds of things. And Kirk is doing the best he can. And he says, I gotta, and they kind of recognize that the only person that's ever going to really kind of handle him in that respect is Kirk. And Kirk finally says, I got to take him on. And they're like, you're going to get killed. He's like, he's going to kill us anyway. Because Spock's like, no, absolutely not. He's like, what am I going to do? He's like, the best we got here is he is not made anybody go away since he started controlling the whole ship. So maybe his powers are limited. He's not completely omnipotent like a Q-type character. He goes, so maybe this is as much as he can do. So I'm going to try to challenge him, and then while I'm fighting him, you guys knock him out. Yeah. And that's the best we can do. And it doesn't work. Yeah, no. It's actually kind of funny. Like, the crew doesn't win, so to speak.
Yeah, like, he beats him. Like, he's
gives him that stomach ache.
He's about oh, by the way, I noticed it in that shot when he's, like, on the ground having a stomach ache. Like, you can kind of see this, like, where, like, the stages they built were modular at the time.
Right.
Like, they pulled pieces in and brought them out.
Right.
Like, you could see the seam between the captain's chair and the rest of the bridge kind of, like, opening up a little bit.
I'm going to have to go back and watch remastered versions because I guess I'm not seeing that. I was not watching the VHSs, by the way. I'm just watching it on Universe, Paramount.
I mean, I just thought it was interesting that, like, they couldn't, they would tear down the set, put a new set in its place. So of course they got to be modular.
I think the bridge set, the reason it's modular is because where the view screen is, that section would get pulled back, and then they would only put that section back in for that. So I don't think that set was ever taken apart. I think the front of the set was taken off so they could film sequences, and the only thing that was in the front is probably the console, and everything to the right, they had sections that were detachable, and clearly the screen is one of them.
Yeah, and I imagine the chair could also be pulled out so the camera crew could get in and do the
probably,
shots to the signs.
Yeah, because you got to figure there's it's funny, there is some motion camera in this, and that camera probably weighed like 500 pounds and had tubes and stuff. Like, it's not like nowadays you can go buy a Ronin. Like, those cameras were huge. So anytime the camera tracked or panned or moved, like, that's a lot of, and there's some tracking shots in this. One spot where Kirk goes into the turbo lift and it follows him. Like, it's,
yeah, like
that must have been pretty freaking hard back then.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if it is in something like similar to what we did at the school, which was that we just had it on a tripod on wheels and just rolled it everywhere.
It probably was.
Yeah, I wonder if it wasn't something like that.
I mean, there were some handhelds that you could tell. Like, it's just like probably some beefy camera guy just like walking around with like an enormous 50-pound camera on it. And now, from a word from our sponsor, Comicscon or whatever that was.
Comicscon. Kazakhstan.
Which will have our uniforms eventually.
Hopefully for the next episode.
Yeah, well, yeah, with the monthly production schedule at least.
That's what I was looking at, by the way, when I didn't switch the cameras, was looking at the uniform.
They're nice.
They are nice. I mean, seriously, I'm serious. I think I'm going to buy the ears so I can be a Vulcan.
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe you'll be, happy with me.
In case he wants to keep this in. Like, yeah, I'm getting the Kirk, blue, gold, green, like...
It's yellow.
Yellow, yeah.
It's yellow.
It kind of maybe I'm thinking of his tunic, which is definitely green.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely green. But the one that you're talking about, I mean, it's like that's yellow. Yeah. Like that's you can't. See it. It's yellow though.
I mean, look at it here though. Like it's kind of like a greenish.
No, it's yellow. You're just colorblind.
Well, maybe it's just
That's very, very, very yellow.
The camera, like. camera.
No.
Or
Rick, I think you're just colorblind.
The fact that these are like from the 80s and they're just kind of faded.
But even in the episodes we were watching yesterday, I think it's interesting that they change all of the colors of their outfits. Also the style. At one point they were like sweaters and they had like turtlenecks on them.
Yeah, it was episode 3. That was the second
that original costume.
Yeah.
So Kirk and Charlie, they grab each other, right? This is for practice bout, right?
Right.
And
the shirtless Captain Kirk.
yeah, shirtless Captain Kirk. He was, Charlie just had a hold of his enormous delts as best as he could, and because William Shatner was pretty beefy at the time.
Yes.
But he had him, and like he was just kind of like wildly flailing at him, and this is what leads up to Charlie making the guy disappear because Kirk then throws him.
It's funny because we never see the gym ever again.
Yeah.
But it's funny because the grid wall, you can see through the other side of the gym where the two people are fighting with the ninja, the goofy sticks.
Oh, that's you're about to bring up the TNG thing,
Yeah,
right?
what are those? I forget. Is that Danja or whatever the?
It had a
It's the thing that
name.
Riker fights his dad with. So they bring back like something that was just some silly. Somebody was like, "Hey, make some stupid props for guys to fight with." But it's funny. The wall is the wall from engineering. Like that separates engineering from like the impulse engines, and it's that same wall with the grid with the holes in it, and they just moved it in. So like you can see how they like sets get reused all the time. Like the botany episode, the botany is just sickbay, and they brought in the bad fake plants with the puppet going.
Oh yeah, that stupid hand thing.
It's like feed me Seymour.
Well, he was watching that episode.
The puppet. It's the puppet from Rick Little
was
Shop of Horrors.
Watching that episode a little bit ago, and I walked in and I was like, "Is that just a hand?"
Yes, it's a hand.
he goes, "Yes."
That's how they did it back then. That's how these shows like this show and Doctor Who did it, or Lost in Space or any of these shows.
It's literally just a glove.
It's just a guy with they had
glued on fake flowers.
It's like a puppet you would make for school, like in 4th grade. Put some feathers on it. I mean, we got to make fun of it because it's just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah,
but what else were they going to do? Plus, they said no one's going to watch this ever again. Yeah. It's not going to be around in 50 years. Who cares?
Yeah,
and of course, here it is.
And here it is.
Yeah, back then they definitely that was a one-off plant. They definitely weren't going to put all their budget into the hand puppet thing that they used for the plant. Yeah, just throw some feathers on a glove. That's fine.
They're just spray painting plants from something else, and they're just throwing them on the set. Like some of that stuff. But that's, again, it's the sickbay set. Oh, but no, the one I wanted to bring up was, which again is an insight thing, is that when Charlie starts to make Spock act silly, and again, anytime Nimoy is the freaking actor that he is, he just doesn't do it. He's doing it, but he's fighting it.
Yeah.
And it shows the quality acting of Leonard Nimoy to like trying to be Vulcan, but also being forced to recite silly poetry.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like killing him.
Yeah.
Like it will destroy him, and Spock, obviously Kirk knows that.
Yeah, like Kirk's just like, leave my crew alone. This is not, you can't be doing this.
Right.
Oh yeah, and when he sends people away, it seems like I didn't mention this already. It seems like he's implying that he doesn't really know what happens to them. Like Charlie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like he says,
he doesn't quite understand. Yeah. Again, I think the concept that he's a teenager. This is, again, you're making really good points that I never thought of before, and I think you're probably right. I think because he's again a teenager, he probably doesn't really know what he's capable of, and he just does things because he's an impulsive teenager. So and I love that line where Spock says, "We're in the hands of an adolescent." Yeah. This is awful. Right. So yeah, I don't think he knows where they go.
Yeah.
Because if he would, he'd bring her back.
Yeah, I definitely felt like he was lying when he said, "Yeah, I know where they go."
Yeah.
It just didn't feel
right.
Which is a credit to the actor that he managed to say that in a way that sounded like, it was like, "Oh, I don't know where they go." Right. It was more like,
And again,
or,
I think
you know,
that the show deserves credit for a lot of the direction and the writing. Like DC Fontana, I think, might have wrote this episode. And I think the writing's good, but I also think that there was a nice collaboration between the writers and the directors because clearly there's a lot of things that get flushed out in the performances. And that's why part of the reason why I think the show holds up so well compared to other shows that you watch later. Lost in Space doesn't have the following. You know, Doctor Who, as much as I love Doctor Who, it's tough to watch the old shows from the 60s.
Yeah, oh yeah, like Star Trek just holds up in a way that a lot of older shows don't. And I
Not
think,
every episode.
I mean, yeah, not
There's going to be some bad ones,
Yeah, there's gonna
but
be
I
some
think
things.
this early part where they had the budget and they were very focused for sure.
So moving on to the end of the episode, we get a lot of like, unless you had more.
No, I think we're at the point. I think we got a good point. I think we're at the point now where we get kind of again a
Yeah.
bit of the irony like that of this.
Yeah, like we were discussing this earlier, but before the podcast, but they get caught up. The aliens, I think they mentioned this a little bit earlier. They were like, we're getting ship-to-ship communications, but I can't hear it.
Right.
And then Charlie comes in and is like, yeah, I'm blocking communication. I think that might have been them, but they have been following them for a while. I think by them I mean the aliens.
Yeah, I forget the name of the race.
Thelosians, I think.
Thelosians or something like that.
It doesn't matter, but we never see him again.
Yeah.
But so I think it's implied that they've been following him for a while, and they basically just come in and like Charlie immediately knows he feels them or knows that
Mom
they're
and
there.
Dad just got home.
Yeah, he's just like no, wait a
You
minute.
were having a party and Mom and Dad just got home.
Yeah, and we'll get to Mom and Dad getting home later on in the season, but
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
But so they get there and they're like they basically just I think the first thing they do before they even say anything, they bring Yeoman Rand back and onto the bridge for some reason. Well, actually, probably not for some reason. They probably did that to make sure that Kirk knew she was okay.
Right.
And then the effect appears where we get the
Christian was joking about the fact, like, how many times are we going to get like the blurry face just project? I'm like a lot.
Yeah, we're
you
gonna
know,
get
like
that
it was like what else? They didn't have a lot of other like you had limited things that you could do at this time frame.
Yeah, everything
in
was
terms-
analog back then. Yeah. Like they didn't have any
It was
digital
just
effects.
it was just green screening and layering of video, layering of film and video and stuff.
Yeah,
you know.
I actually wish I had researched how they did the like wavy effect on it because like the whole thing was wavy.
There were a lot of effects that were built into cameras even at this point. I'm assuming it's a video feedback thing where they were basically probably videotaping a TV. They were probably taking the camera and putting it onto a screen and then filming the screen with another camera. And you would create that weird video like
it's
you
just
get
kinda
a
like
weird
going
video
like,
effect.
Going like this a little bit.
And it was like almost you could adjust the vertical hold, and that's probably what a lot of it was back then. You know?
Yeah, but so they get there. They're like, yeah, we undid everything. We couldn't save the freighter or whatever it was.
Right.
I think it was a freighter, right?
Well, because the shit that blew up.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. I guess that kind of implies they do have limits.
Right.
Like they can't just bring an entire ship back and the crew.
Right.
Well, I guess that's kind of like where we get like being sent away versus being killed. Like he just killed them. Like they exploded.
That ship exploded. He made a metal plate go away, so they could make the metal plate come back.
Yeah, but they
But
can't.
the ship's gone, so what are you bringing it back for? He destroyed something with his powers by removing something. The face, the old woman, the guy in the gym, Yeoman Rand, all that stuff is just like he's able to make his legs not broken. They can fix something that's still here. They can't reassemble something that and bring life back. Because I don't think they're dead. I think they're just in some weird, their universe. They're probably floating around where those aliens live, where he's going to end up.
Probably some kind of a pocket dimension
Yeah.
or something. But so they show up, reverse most of the damage that he did to the ship, and not to everybody else. And they're just like, and this is where we get like kind of like this. It's almost like we he is a sympathetic character.
I
Charlie.
think at the end of
Like-
the day, that's why I think this is different from other shows. Like even the last episode where we just kill a creature, now we have a different type of powerful creature. And again, the moral play is that, well, let's not, oh, good, he's gone. Like,
Yeah,
no, there's like an aspect of, he's just a kid.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's give him a second chance. And Charlie's pleading with him. You said you were my friends when I came on board. And he's pleading with them. I can't go back. I mean, like, they don't love. I can't touch them. There's no women. I can't get my groove on.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't riz anybody up.
There's no ladies there. I can't get my drink on, so to speak,
Yeah.
Wah, wah. Sorry, he's gotta have
There you
more.
go.
Captain Kirk, can't you feel me?
I'm trying to hit on Yeoman Rand, but she's not gonna be there.
Yeah. I'll give Linda a chance, or whatever the other girl's name is. I'll give her a shot.
Yeah.
Why not the heck? I'll apologize for turning into a lizard. Like I'm hoping she doesn't hold a grudge.
Yeah,
And Kirk begrudgingly looks around, and they all kind of look at him like, "Come on, Captain."
Yeah.
And he does. I think he does make his case that like he should be with his own kind, and like, isn't there anything you can
Can't
do?
you
And
take
they're
his
like,
powers away or
like,
something?
can't you do something? And they're like, nope, he'll use his powers. He's a bad boy. He's just, and they're like, I don't know. They think that they're relieved, but they also feel guilty that he's done.
Yeah, we actually get some good acting from I don't remember what Yeoman Rand's actress's
Grace
name is.
Whitney.
Grace Whitney. We get some good acting from her, or probably more specifically, good directing.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, he's pleading right before he gets sucked off into like whatever alternate universe that they exist in. She tries to go to him to like comfort him. Like he's you all right? He's just like trying to convince them to let him stay and everything, and she's just like even after he sent her off into oblivion basically, she's still like,
Right.
well, I feel I feel sorry for this poor.
Yeah, she's gonna go to him, and
Yeah.
McCoy kind of holds her
Yeah.
back. And again, that's probably not a scripted thing. I'm gonna assume you're the film director. I would imagine that you would interpret. Those are things that get interpreted when you're directing. Like, what should I just stand here? And he's like, no, you should. You feel bad for everything that's transpired, so you should try to go to him. And McCoy, Leonard, DeForest, you hold her back and not let her go, and let's all kind of feel bad for Charlie in this moment. And then stay. And then you get the nice echo audio effect in post production.
Yeah, I watched this episode a couple years ago when I was like really trying to get into Star Trek, and now that I'm producing with you guys, I really should probably start watching along with you. But the thing I liked about this episode, well, and also a lot of the other ones in particular, is the staging of everything is really well done. And it's like you said, you're gonna go over here and do all this, and it's like in this scene in particular, they're really she kills it with like, and you really like, you start to feel bad for him, even though he's like murdering everyone. You're like,
And he's just causing chaos.
quote unquote murdering, but
Well, and they think she's just gone. They think that whatever Ralph or whatever his name is in the gym is gone too. Like, and obviously the other ship's destroyed, and they're very nervous of what he'll do if he gets to Colony 5. So they understand at all costs. Like Kirk, if he needed to, he would destroy the ship.
Yeah, he probably would have just.
Yeah,
I
we'll
think
get
he
to-
was destroying the ship when he turned everything on. Like that was probably overloading stuff. You kind of hear it in the
To
background.
see if he could control that. And I definitely think that there's that. The other thing I'll mention about the way the show's produced, there's a lot of in these early episodes, I really love the way they use lighting. Like there's a lot of stuff where like Kirk's face is very, like it's a extreme close up on Kirk's face, and it's like we're only seeing like his eyes, and it's that one when he says, like, go with them or I'll pick you up and carry you. And it's like freaking dramatic because we know that, Kirk says, if you kill me, you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me. So, but I'm not going to like do whatever you say.
Yeah, like I think people overstate Shatner's like Stardate 279.
Right.
They overstate that, or at least as of season 1, he's not doing that. Like
Yeah.
he's theatrical, but he's
But
believable.
it's an acting style of the time period.
Yeah.
This is very like 60s. A lot of what you get trailing off from the actors of the 1950s when you think of like Brando in the one where he's the motorcycle rider or whatever that one's called. Like there's that style of acting that over the, because back then most of the actors were very Leslie Nielsen in Airplane. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, but don't call me Shirley. Like as opposed to like actors with emotion. Like the 60s were very much about the emotion. You played that emotion on your sleeve. That was way so. Shatner's an actor of his time.
Yeah.
That's the style that he's made famous for himself.
Well, I think if I can pitch in here, I think one of the things I like about him in particular in the original series is like he's almost written sort of like a noir narrator. So when he does the Stardate stuff and he's like Stardate, Charlie was da 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 da.
It is.
It's almost like noir murder mystery esque, like with his dialogue
it
and
is
also
my
his
camera.
delivery.
It is that kind of like
Yeah.
definitely I agree with that. I never thought of that too. I guess I thought that the Starlogs were just exposition, and they are, but at the same time I think they are a bit of storytelling.
And I
film
like the
old
idea
radiator was hissing like an old radiator, like like that type of thing.
and there was blood on the floor, and I walked in and I looked at it. And I said,
She had
gross."
She had legs that started at her ankles and went all the way up to her hips.
But yeah, but he does kind of talk like that, and I like that.
First draft theater,
because
like,
they also do a lot of stuff like that, especially in the Charlie episode when he talks about that kind of stuff. It's like it is sort of, I guess you're seeing it from, like, obviously the show is told from his perspective, I guess, but when you do the captain's logs and stuff like that, you can see how he is figuring it out, even though we as the audience already know. It's nice to see how he is sort of figuring it out through his his logs and things.
Funny
like
thing
that.
about
I like
the captain's log is they're very inconsistent on the show, because in the last episode, Kirk's log is, we didn't know it at the time, but blah 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 blah. This was a creature. And this episode, they're all within the context of, theoretically, before the scene happened, Captain Kirk ran to his quarters and did a captain's log. So here's what's going on right now. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of like when you watch a cooking show and the guy's talking about, I decided to make a chicken, whatever. But it was like they're recording that later. Yeah. But he's talking like, I decided to make a chick, but he's talking about it in the present tense, even though that was recorded.
They're
next day.
They're like, chicken? What am I gonna do with this?
Yeah,
and then it cuts to them like 3 days prior making the
So
the recipe.
the captain's logs are, and eventually other people get to do captain's log. I think Spock does one. Different characters do them, and in the upcoming series, they all get to do logs. Personal logs. And I think like the idea is that they're all over the place, and that's part about how the stories and the episodes were written, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, the practical reason for the logs is just to come back from commercial.
Sure.
Yeah, just so you can get caught up on what's going on.
Oh yeah, well.
But
And I love the captain's log music, like dun 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 dun. dun. I mean, I love the music. I love the music in this episode. I like. It's funny because nowadays we write new music for just about every episode of every show. Back then they just had they had like just a catalog of music, and they had to re-edit it and use it over and over and over again, which in retrospect is great because then we get the fight scene music that everybody can hum. Modern shows you don't do that on modern shows. You don't think about, remember that episode, how good that episode was, unless they use a famous song like, Climbing Up That Hill or something on Stranger Things. We tend to like not think about how often, the background music has become iconic as much as the theme has become iconic. What else we got with our 2 minutes? I think obviously we were a little longer than we normally would be. But
well, we had a lot of we talked a lot about Star Trek in general in this episode, which I think in other episodes probably we would have already addressed it. So we got a chance to talk about how we felt about the show in general and like production of the show, so and a little bit about ourselves as well.
We had to do some exposition in the first episode. We had to
we
establish the characters, so to speak.
Had to do the captain's log of the podcast.
There you go.
So, so on the next episode, we will be getting to Where No Man Has Gone Before. Wait, yes, that's the one. And probably will also be getting to The Naked Time.
Yeah, we'll probably get to those two.
Because Where No Man Has Gone Before is basically the same concept as Charlie X.
They meet a lot of very powerful people.
Yeah.
Whether they're robots or aliens or humans or Q-type characters. That's fine. What I do like about the Star Trek universe is that they aren't the most powerful people around. Like if you watch Star Wars in general,
They're all on the same
biggest
level.
badasses in the universe is the Empire and the Emperor and the Jedi. And we do kind of know some other things from Clone Wars, but in Star Trek, like they aren't omnipotent. They aren't the most powerful.
They're not the
Creatures
most-
in the
yeah.
universe. There is a lot of unknown still.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, eventually we get Q, so
Yeah.
you know.
And
But
his relatives. So
yeah, we got. So I guess I'll go through the socials then. The Instagram is Double Fist Punch Pod, at Double Fist Punch Pod. That's what I named it. And then we're also going to have a TikTok of the same name, so you could go follow us there if you want. It's my first time hosting a podcast, so I'm not
You did great.
exactly how to close out.
just I'll do it.
Okay.
Well, that was fun. And now we should freeze. And then there should
Oh.
be a shot of the Enterprise flying away. That's
yeah.
because that's every episode. That's how every episode of Star Trek ends. Almost always.
But it
Rarely-
won't actually be a freeze frame. It'll be you guys just holding there.
And then it moves the ship and flies away. So no, this is a great job, and I can't. It's going to take us a long time to go through everything, but
yeah.
I'm super excited for this. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I assume we're still recording.
Yep.
All right. So check us out next time. We'll be doing maybe 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Maybe even 4.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. And make sure you hit people only with your 2 hands intertwined as such. Remember, you can do uppercuts,
Yep.
you can do down, you can do side to
I guess you
side.
could come up and hit somebody in the chin.
Yeah.
So, there's so much you can do with it.
Yeah.
So, take care.